Gourmet number 8, Coco. Coco? Yes, Coco.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another chapter on the tantalizing and ultimately hunger-inducing tale of Toriko. Here we are with volume number 2. Obviously, the last chapter that we did was the ending of volume 1, and saw the second, I guess, sort of smaller arc, story arc, come to a close. We were able to see the rainbow fruit, being eaten by Toriko, and I never really thought that a few pages of describing an imaginary food item could get me so worked up, so hungry, so excited to eat. I honestly and truly think that between reading this series and then, of course, the holidays coming up, that I am going to be a much larger person over the next few months. So I'm definitely going to have to watch my intake of foods, because it is difficult to not eat while watching this. So there's been a little bit, too, that I've seen some personal messages and comments and everything like that about how I actually pronounce Toriko. And it's, phonetically they're saying you pronounce it Toriko as opposed to Toriko. So a lot of times I just say it fast, and to be honest, I will get into a good habit of saying Toriko, but when I slow it down like that, it sounds retarded. So I just try to say Toriko. But at any rate, I will make sure that I try to address and correct that. So just letting you all know that I do hear your cries and your pleas. And I do read the comments and obviously the personal messages as well. So try to get as much of it right as I can. So let's just dive right in, shall we? So this volume goes and picks up, and certainly we're starting a different story arc, and it's Komatsu, and first it starts out with the Toriko only hunts Toriko only hunts for 2 reasons. 1, because he's hired by somebody else, obviously, to go and capture their food, or 2, because he's hungry. So, and then it goes and it shows us on this train, Komatsu and Toriko are on this train, and he's eating as usual. Toriko is. He's munching up, and he's not actually eating. He's actually drinking glass after glass of was it bourbon or whiskey or something like that he is drinking, and having it with chasers, with these magical platinum lemon chasers or whatever. So again, something that just induces hunger and thirst. Just watching this few page exchange of him drinking and then going and sucking the lemon or eating the lemon afterwards. It's all drawn very well. The art style I've mentioned before is very nice, and it's very, very close to a comic book art style, just with the way the shading and the texture. Something that's really hard to explain. It's really more of that I'd have to show visual comparisons, but very, very cool stuff though. So we wind up finding out that the next journey that they're on, the next capture that they're going to go on, is to hunt the elusive puffer whale, and apparently the puffer whale is something that every 10 years or so there's reported to have been a school of them migrating to this lagoon where they are where they're going to be in shallow water. And it seems like it has something to do too with it seems akin to what I've heard from the puffer fish, which is, I guess there's only 10 cooks in the world that can properly prepare one of these things, because you have to be able to be licensed and trained to remove this poison sac from it and to prepare and cook it properly, which is very similar to, and I've seen a few things on Man vs. Food and stuff on the actual puffer fish, or I forget the exact species of it, but it's something similar to that that we actually have, that if it's not prepared properly, you in fact can die. So that's kind of scary. But so they're sitting there talking about how they're going to this, and how ultimately what happens is the market price gets driven up just based on the rumor that there is some around. Sometimes there's false rumors even created to just drive the price of things up, because the market price, again, being like the stock market, but for food, the market price of things fluctuates based on the supply and demand and how much is actually there. And then, of course, when a rumor of these, these puffer whales being around surfaces, and they know they're going to be able to get a hold of more, that basically the stocks go up for those particular companies. So very, very cool world building stuff, in my opinion. We find out that Igo, though, did check this out and make sure it's not a rumor, and it's certainly it's true. So they're on this train, and this train is filled with a number of gourmet hunters that are on their way to the lagoon to obviously all try to capture a puffer fish or a puffer whale. And we wind up having this this guy that walks up, and he just kind of reminds me of like if you ever seen the Austin Powers movies, like Fat Bastard, just kind of like that. Oh, get in my belly, just like that sort of like drunk, maybe Irishman or Scottish type of guy, like a Scottish guy. Because he's over there and he's bitching and complaining that there's no liquor, and we found out in a couple pages earlier that Toriko had bought all the alcohol on the train already, and he's already down like 10 bottles or whatever, and he's got like a case of them underneath there, so he goes and he's this guy's bitching and complaining that there's no liquor, and then he comes over and it says, Zongeh, or not, Zongeh, that's what it is, Zongeh. Gourmet Hunter, and we know that there's other Gourmet Hunters on the train. So he winds up coming over to Toriko and, kind of trying to intimidate and bitch him out because of him having the liquor, So Toriko goes, and then he goes on and on about, oh yeah, and look at me full course meal that I have prepared, and a lot of the things that are on there are already things that like Toriko has caught and pretty much like given away or eaten and said they're okay. So, but that's this guy's menu, his full course menu, so his life's menu. But anyway, there winds up being a little bit of an exchange, and ultimately Toriko goes and he kind of, uses his like intimidation factor, it looks like, because then this guy's kind of stuttering this and that. But Toriko then goes and does the right thing, or the nice thing, and says, yeah, go ahead, help yourself to some. It's fine. I'm sorry I bought it all up, So he explains, though, to Komatsu then that pretty much that's all it was. It was an intimidation factor, and there's a lot of these gourmet hunters, and they're really just kind of feeling each other out to see what's going on, who's whose strength, who's amongst them, that's all. So, but ultimately he tells Komatsu that, he says, you keep your friends close, but your enemies closer, and that's why he did what he did as far as buying out the liquor and then giving some away to this guy. And he keeps calling him Zombie, which is real funny, He goes, he says, okay, Zombie, and he's like, no, it's Zongeh, and don't you forget it. But he's kind of trailing off, so you can tell that intimidation of Toriko worked on him. So they then go, and there's an old man that comes up and asks for some liquor, and just looks like an old drunk, This he's got this white pompadour kind of Elvis look going to him. And Toriko goes, he says, that's fine, go ahead and take some. We're getting off at the next stop anyway, right? And they kind of deduces this guy's a drunk. I don't know if this guy's going to pop up later on or what, or if it's going to be important, but they get off the train, and he says, oh, thank you so much, the drunk, and Toriko's like, don't worry about it, no big deal, because he's like, I'll pay you back, and he's like, don't think nothing of it. So they get off in Fortune City. That's where they're actually going to get off, or in Fortune Town. I think it's Fortune City, though. And it winds up being that there's a bunch of these fortune tellers, these like gourmet fortune tellers that can foresee, different things and fluctuations within the market of gourmet food, right? And we're in the era of gourmet, right? And what they can also do is this town has been very prosperous because they can also like more or less see when monsters are going to, because we find out as they're walking down the street, it says it's Monster O'Clock. And Komatsu's like, Monster O'Clock, what's that all about? Toriko then goes and takes the time to explain to him that these fortune tellers actually can go and they warn everybody, when there is monsters afoot or near, and then they can all get into shelters, houses that are basically structures that have poison siding, which I thought was really kind of a cool thought. You're safe if you get in the house in time, or the structure, the building, whatever that has this poison siding. The monsters won't come, so won't come in there. So it's definitely kind of a cool world that they live in to see. So as they're going and they're walking down the street, and it's deserted. That's what Komatsu also makes mention of. That's when he sees the Monster O'Clock sign, because everybody's not there. And we find out the little background, of course, about Fortune City and these gourmet fortune tellers. So then we go and we see, and just really kind of a cool drawn picture of Coco, who we met just very, very briefly at the end of last chapter of the first volume, and we see this guy. He looks cool, man. He's got his legs are like wrapped from the knee down, kind of like a kickboxer. And he's got this cool looking like stoic sort of cape that hangs over him, but it's not really a cape. It's kind of like one of those wraps that like the guys from the westerns, would wear, to keep the dust off of them and stuff like that. Just really kind of a cool looking character. But we see him at the end of the street, and I just kind of hear like the western, but anyway, that was terrible. But you get my point. So everything's all deserted, and then all of a sudden a monster goes, and it looks like a dragon or something like that appears behind him, And at first I was thinking, I don't know if this is like just this dude's intimidation thing, or it's his pet or something because he's such a badass. Who knows? But it's this other character being introduced because Toriko explained to Komatsu that, hey, listen, you got to have some help on these things. So he's obviously going to enlist the help of maybe this friend of his or what have you. So we see him at the end of the street, see the dragon. Komatsu's freaking as usual, because he's like, oh my God, this is so terrible, So then we go and we see as this thing goes and approaches him, we see Coco just go and just kind of grab this thing and just be like, and pretty much just like push him off to the side or kind of hit him or whatever. It's kind of like you should like. So we just assume that he just like nailed him, maybe in a pressure point area, or just intimidated him and basically said, "Walk on home, boy." Because then we go and we see in the very next panel, this thing kind of does a 180, and he's just kind of like walking away. It just reminds you like a wounded dog, just kind of like, and so he leaves. So then they go and they approach each other, and Coco has some kind of, some smart ass words to Toriko about not wanting to see him, or wish it was somebody else, or it could have been anybody else, something like that. And Toriko goes and says something about, the gentleman of the four kings. So now whatever they alluded to, and they mentioned, I don't know, 4 or 5 chapters ago about these 4 kings, we can assume that Coco is one of those 4 kings, and he's the gentleman of the 4 kings. And that's pretty much how the chapter ends off. I mean, Toriko asks him, he says, how are you doing on your full course, menu, your life's menu type thing. And he says that he still has 3 courses left to fill. And then it shows his menu, and a lot of the things on his menu, everything it shows the capsule is next to, and many of them are in like the 20s and stuff like that, which is obviously past, beyond what we've seen already now. So definitely very cool stuff, and certainly looking forward to seeing the next chapter. That is how things finish off over here. But I guess my question is going to be, what do you think of, obviously we've seen a lot about the world building and everything else, but what do you think about, just initially from meeting and from seeing the character design of Coco? That is a question that I have, because as I said, I certainly think that he was pretty cool looking, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, though. For all I know, maybe the guy, turns out to be like a background character. I mean, he is on the cover of, of the volume over here, but who knows? I don't know what his role is down the road. So if you could leave the answer to that question, brothers and sisters, in the comments down below. Go grab yourself something to eat, and then come back and hit the thumbs up, the like button if you think that I deserve it, or if the food you ate was good, and then subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching you in the next one, nation.
Let us know if you like the series by liking the series. Hit the like button.